Rain fell softly that morning, the kind that soaks through even the thickest umbrellas. The sky hung low and gray, as if it too mourned the woman we were about to bury. I stood there motionless, my hands trembling around a wilted white rose. My mother, the only parent I ever knew, was gone. People whispered behind black veils, their voices blending with the hum of the rain. I could feel their eyes on me, pitying, curious, cold. But I didn't care about them. I kept my eyes fixed on the casket as it was lowered, my mind numb, my chest hollow. Then a hand touched my shoulder. "Emily," said a soft voice, the one I'd known since childhood. "She's at peace now, sweetheart." It was Aunt Margaret, my mother's sister, my anchor in every storm. Her perfume, lavender and rain, wrapped around me like old memories. She had always been the calm one, the graceful one, the one everyone admired. But that day, even through my grief, something about her felt off. Her eyes were red, yes, but dry. Her voice steady, too steady. And when she pulled me close, I felt the faintest tremor in her breath, like fear hiding behind kindness. The funeral ended with soft hymns and murmured condolences. As the crowd thinned, Margaret led me toward the car. "Come, dear. You shouldn't be alone today." I nodded, exhausted. Back at the house, the lawyer waited. I remember the room smelling of old books and rain-soaked coats. The air was thick with tension. Relatives gathered around, pretending to comfort me, but their eyes kept flicking to the man holding a brown leather folder, the will. He cleared his throat. According to the last testament of Catherine Miller, my mother's name echoed through the silence. He read the first few lines, formalities, legal words that meant nothing to me. Until he reached the final page, his voice faltered. "To my daughter Emily, born under the guardianship of my sister, Margaret Miller." The room froze, someone gasped. My heart stopped. "Daughter?" I looked at Margaret. Her face went pale, her lips parted, but no sound came out. And in that moment, standing between the ghosts of truth and lies, I realized the funeral I had just attended wasn't just for my mother. It was for the life I thought I had. Growing up, Aunt Margaret was my safe place. She had this calm smile that could quiet any storm in my heart. Every birthday, she was there with a gift wrapped in silver paper saying, "You're growing into such a beautiful young lady, Emily. Your mother would be proud." I used to believe her. I used to think she and my mother were just two sisters, inseparable, different in every way but bound by love. My mother was fiery, passionate, always working, always busy. Aunt Margaret, on the other hand, was grace in motion, soft-spoken, patient, the one who listened when my mother didn't have time. When I was little, I'd spend weekends at her country house. She'd braid my hair, tell me stories about when your mother and I were young, always laughing, always careful. But there were moments, small, fleeting, when the laughter stopped too soon. Once, when I was 12, I asked, "Aunt Margaret, why don't you have children of your own?" Her hands froze mid-braid. The brush clattered against the floor. She smiled too quickly. "Some people just aren't meant to, dear. I have you." "Isn't that enough?" I remember her eyes then, shiny, distant, like she was seeing someone who wasn't me. And there were whispers, too. Family gatherings where the older relatives would pause when I entered. My name would hang heavy in the air before someone changed the subject. I thought it was because of my mother. She had a sharp tongue, and people feared her. But maybe, even then, they all knew something I didn't. The tension between my mother and Aunt Margaret grew worse over the years. They'd argue in hushed voices when they thought I wasn't listening. I remember one night, my mother shouting, "You promised me, Margaret." "Don't you dare!" And Margaret replying, almost broken, "I had no choice." You know I had no choice. I never understood what they meant, but now, after that will reading, those memories flooded back with new meaning. Every odd glance, every unfinished sentence, every moment of silence between them, it all whispered the same question: what were they hiding from me? The next morning, the lawyer called me back to his office to clarify the will. His voice over the phone was polite but tense, like he already knew the storm he'd unleashed. Aunt Margaret insisted on coming with me. She smiled tightly in the car, hands clasped in her lap, knuckles white. Neither of us spoke. The silence was heavier than words. When we arrived, the lawyer stood beside a stack of papers and a small envelope sealed with wax. "Miss Miller," he said carefully, "your mother left detailed instructions regarding your guardianship and your birth." My heart thudded so hard it drowned his words. "Guardianship? Birth? He opened the folder and read aloud. To my beloved daughter, Emily. You were born under the care of my sister, Margaret, who raised you as her own to protect you from judgment and harm. The truth was never meant to hurt you, only to shield you. I felt my breath catch. Born under the care of my sister. I turned to Margaret. What does that mean? What's he talking about? Her lips quivered. Emily, please, let's talk somewhere private. No, I shouted. Tell me now. The lawyer lowered his gaze as if he didn't want to see the pieces of my life shatter. It means, he said softly, that the woman you called mother was actually your aunt. And your Aunt Margaret, he hesitated, is your biological mother. The room spun. The air vanished. I remember gripping the edge of the chair, trying to breathe. Margaret reached for me, but I pulled away like her touch burned. Why? I whispered. Why would you lie to me? Tears welled in her eyes, but she said nothing. Not a single word. Just silence. The kind that hides behind guilt. That silence was my answer. As I walked out of that office, the world around me felt unreal. The woman who had comforted me, raised me, loved me, was a stranger. And the woman I'd just buried had built her life on a lie. In that moment, I realized the truth didn't set you free. It trapped you, until you decided to fight your way out. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. The air in that house felt poisoned. Every photograph, every memory suddenly twisted into a lie. I drove aimlessly through the dark until the rain started again, washing over my windshield like tears I refused to shed. By morning, I was back in the city, standing in front of Margaret's townhouse. She opened the door before I could even knock, as if she'd been waiting all night. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen, but her voice was steady. Emily, please come in. We need to talk. I followed her inside, my steps heavy with anger. Talk? I said sharply. Now you want to talk? After 22 years of lies? She flinched but motioned for me to sit. You deserve the truth, she whispered. But it's not what you think. I didn't sit. Then tell me, I demanded. Who am I? Why did you let me believe she was my mother? Her hands trembled as she poured tea neither of us would drink. Because when you were born, I was barely 18. I was unmarried, terrified. Our parents, your grandparents, said I'd bring shame to the family. They forced Catherine to take you as her own. She agreed, reluctantly. Her words echoed through the room. Forced, shame, reluctantly. I felt my heart sink. So she raised me out of pity? Margaret shook her head. No, she grew to love you more than life itself. But she also resented me. Every time she looked at you, she saw the secret she had to keep. My throat tightened. All those years of their arguments, their cold distance, it wasn't jealousy. It was guilt, I asked quietly. And you? Did you ever plan to tell me? Her voice cracked. Every birthday, every Christmas, I wanted to. But Catherine swore me to silence. She said revealing the truth would destroy you. And maybe she was right. I looked at her, this woman who was both mother and stranger, and felt a rush of anger and pity all at once. You didn't just hide the truth, I said softly. You buried it. And you buried me with it. For the first time, Margaret had no words, only tears, and in that silence I realized the truth wasn't buried in the past. It was buried inside me, waiting to rise. A week after that conversation, I went back to my Catherine's house. The funeral flowers had wilted, their petals scattered across the marble floor. The house was silent, too silent, as if it was holding its breath. Something inside me told me there was more than what Margaret had confessed. So I climbed the narrow attic stairs, the wooden boards creaking beneath my feet. The air was thick with dust and memories. In a corner, behind old trunks and faded photo albums, I found a small cedar box tied with a red ribbon. It had Catherine's handwriting on it. Private, for my eyes only. My hands shook as I untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of yellowed letters. The first one was dated 23 years ago. Dear Margaret, I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending she's mine. Every time she smiles, I see you. Every time she calls me Mom, it feels like I'm stealing your life. But I promised Mother and Father, and I'll keep that promise for now. My heart pounded as I read another. People talk, you know. They wonder why you never married, why you spend so much time here. I'm scared, Margaret. If they find out, everything we built will crumble. The more I read, the worse it got. Letters filled with guilt, bitterness, and something else. Fear. Fear of a secret that went deeper than just my birth. One letter stopped me cold. You said you'd take care of it, Margaret. You said no one would ever find out who the father was. Please don't let him come near her again. I froze. Him? Who was him? I tore through the rest of the letters, searching for a name, a clue, but it was all vague, carefully worded, like they knew someone might find them one day. But the tone changed in the last letter. If anything happens to me, promise me you'll tell her the truth, all of it. The paper slipped from my hand. That letter was dated 2 months before Catherine's death. I looked around that dusty attic, the truth swirling around me like ghosts. My mother had known she was running out of time, and she'd wanted me to uncover the secret she'd died protecting. But what secret was worth dying for? The letters haunted me for days. Every line, every word echoed in my head like a whisper from the grave. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I needed answers, and there was only one person who could give them. Margaret. When I arrived at her house, she was in the garden trimming roses as if nothing had happened. Her calmness infuriated me. You knew, I said, my voice trembling. You knew everything, the letters, the father, the lies. You used all of it. Her shears froze midair. She turned slowly, her expression unreadable. So you found them. I found the truth, I said bitterly. You weren't protecting anyone. You were controlling everything, she sighed, setting the shears down. Emily, you don't understand what this family was back then. Appearances meant survival. One mistake could destroy us. Your father, he was a married man, a powerful one. If anyone had known, it would have ruined us all. I felt my stomach twist. So you lied to me my entire life to protect your reputation? Her eyes hardened. To protect you. I laughed bitterly. No, you protected your name. You used my life as a cover-up. Even after Catherine died, you made sure the story stayed clean, didn't you? She didn't answer, but the silence said enough. That's when I realized something. Margaret hadn't just buried the truth. She had profited from it. She was the executor of Catherine's estate, the one who managed the inheritance, the house, everything, and she'd kept me dependent. Every school payment, every allowance, every major decision, she controlled it all. You kept me under your thumb, I whispered. You didn't raise me out of love. You raised me to keep your secret safe. Margaret's composure cracked. You ungrateful child. Everything you have is because of me. I stepped closer, meeting her gaze. No, everything I lost is because of you. Her face went cold. For the first time, I saw who she truly was. Not the gentle aunt. Not the grieving sister, but a woman built from ambition and fear. As I turned to leave, she called out, You don't know what you're starting? Emily, I paused at the door, my voice low and steady. No, Aunt Margaret. I'm not starting anything. I'm finishing what you began. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the city lights flickering through the window like tiny flames of defiance. I wasn't going to scream or make a scene. Margaret had built her power on appearances, and I knew the only way to destroy her was to let her own truth unravel, quietly, piece by piece. I started by digging. Catherine's will, financial records, old business documents, everything I could find. I spent nights going through files, tracing signatures, comparing handwriting. That's when I found it. Multiple forged documents. Transfers, investments, even property deeds, all under Margaret's control. She hadn't just lied about my birth. She'd stolen what was rightfully mine. I hired a private investigator, pretending it was for family records. Within weeks, he sent me a file thick with evidence, bank transfers to offshore accounts, charity funds that never reached their destinations, and even a letter from a former lawyer who'd quietly resigned after refusing to adjust the estate's balance sheet. It was all there, proof that Margaret wasn't just a manipulator. She was a thief, but I didn't confront her yet. I played the part of the quiet, broken niece, the grieving daughter who didn't have the strength to fight. I smiled when she called, nodded when she offered advice, pretended to accept her comfort. She didn't suspect a thing. While she sipped her morning tea in her perfect little garden, I met with the family lawyer and handed over the evidence. I told him everything. His face turned pale when he saw the documents. Emily, he said, this could ruin her. I know, I replied. That's the point. Then I reached out to the board of the family foundation, Margaret's pride and joy. I sent them copies of the same files anonymously. Within days, whispers began to spread. People started asking questions. Her name appeared in headlines, quietly at first, then louder. Margaret tried to call me, of course. Dozens of times. I let the phone ring. Revenge didn't need words. It needed silence. And in that silence, her empire began to crumble. For the first time in my life, I felt something I'd never known before. Not victory, not triumph, but freedom. The truth was no longer a burden. It was my weapon. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of day that used to feel peaceful. Margaret showed up at my door, uninvited, her perfect mask finally cracking. Her hair was disheveled, her lipstick uneven. She looked nothing like the woman who once commanded every room she entered. "Emily," she began, her voice trembling, "you need to stop this." I didn't move aside. "Stop what?" I asked calmly. "Telling the truth?" She stepped inside anyway, desperate. "You've humiliated me. Do you have any idea what you've done?" The board removed me from the foundation. The papers are calling me a fraud. Everything I built, it's gone. I met her eyes. "Everything you stole is gone." "There's a difference." Her expression hardened. "You think this makes you better than me?" I did what I had to do. I gave you a life you never would have had. Without me, you'd be nothing. I almost laughed. "You didn't give me a life, Margaret." "You gave me a lie," she exhaled sharply, pacing the room. "Fine, you want the truth?" "That man, your father, he was powerful, dangerous. I did what I had to do to protect you. If people knew who he was," I cut her off. "So this was all about you being the hero again, wasn't it?" "You've always wanted control. Even now, you're trying to rewrite the story." Margaret's voice cracked. "You think exposing me will bring Catherine back?" "It won't. It'll just destroy what's left of this family." I stepped closer, calm but firm. "Family?" I whispered. "Family doesn't lie for decades. Family doesn't manipulate, steal, or bury the truth. You don't get to call this a family." She stood there, breathing heavily, her eyes glistening, not from guilt, but fury. "You'll regret this one day," she hissed. "When you're alone, when no one believes you, you'll wish you had me." I opened the door. "I already had you," I said quietly. "And that was the problem." She stared at me for a long moment, her face pale and broken. Then she turned and walked out, slowly, defeated. As the door closed, I felt a weight lift from my chest. For the first time in 22 years, I wasn't someone's secret. I was me, and Margaret? She was finally just a woman with no story left to control. Weeks passed after that final confrontation. The headlines faded, the whispers died down, and the world slowly moved on. But for me, everything still felt raw, like my heart had been rewritten. Every truth I uncovered had cost me something. Trust, family, innocence. I visited Catherine's grave one quiet evening, long after the sun had set. The air was cool and the grass was still damp from rain. I placed a single white rose, the same kind I held at her funeral, on her headstone. "I know now," I whispered. "I know everything." The wind rustled through the trees, soft and distant, almost like her voice. I closed my eyes and let the memories wash over me. Not the lies, not the anger, but the moments that were real. The bedtime stories, the hugs, the laughter that wasn't part of any deception. Those moments were still mine. I realized then that love, even when built on lies, can still be real. The pain doesn't erase the warmth. It just reminds you what it cost. When I left the cemetery, I felt lighter. I didn't forgive Margaret completely, not yet. But I understood her in a way I never had before. She wasn't a monster. She was a coward, a woman who chose fear over truth. And maybe, in her own twisted way, she thought she was saving me. But the real saving didn't come from her. It came from me choosing to face it all, to rebuild myself from the wreckage of secrets and shame. I went back to the old house one last time. The lawyer had finalized everything. The estate was legally mine now. As I walked through the rooms, I didn't see ghosts anymore. I saw beginnings. In Catherine's study, I found one final letter, folded neatly inside her favorite book. Her handwriting was shaky but familiar. "My sweet Emily, if you're reading this, then the truth has found you. Don't let it break you. Let it free you. You were born from love, not shame. Live like it." Tears slipped down my face as I whispered, I will, Mom. I promise. That night, I stood by the window, watching the rain fall again. It didn't feel cold this time. It felt cleansing. Because in the end, I learned that the real will, the one that mattered, wasn't written on paper. It was written in the heart, and mine, for the first time, finally belonged to me.